Good job. Yeah. What are we getting a check for? What is it?
It's a DM for San Jose trip to
Yeah, so
the after conference.
Oh, I thought we paid and then reimbursement.
We don't do reimbursement, we just give you a per diem, and well, I'll talk to you after.
Okay.
Microphones are live and hot right now, and we
Okay.
don't need to touch on it.
Thank
Pick
you.
up everything you
Okay.
say, everything you say.
You just take whatever you want to say, where they freely talk about people,
We encourage you to speak freely, just be aware that it's.
talk about people, and I'm sure we'll get to it.
it's the code.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Right,
Paid in advance.
Yeah.
So,
that way we don't want to deal with your receipts.
well,
Everything's-
it's more labor intensive and you can just pay for it on a company credit card and then get the receipt. Yep, I understand.
Are
We
you
give
subbing
the
for them?
IRS.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
They're like, we need you, and I'm like, I'm in.
It is,
Hey, FYI, I have hard stuff. It's everybody.
okay,
So I don't know if we have any of this. We're gonna lose a quorum or not.
I'm not aware of that.
Jeanette might know.
I might treat the case, the next week's election.
So I didn't know if the chair, if we did have some new.
I don't think would be.
Oh, you're gonna be prepared with notebooks
We
and
have all the
everything.
action items in front of me.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I'm impressed.
Over here.
You are serious, that's why you're a big employee, you know.
I
Wonderful.
don't want, I got too much to keep track of in my brain, so I have to write it all down, so that. Did you guys see my birds?
Yeah, and I have a hawk nest in my front of my house, and they have babies and. What a
Hawks are
mess.
different than little baby.
Yeah, they are.
What do you have?
We
Yes,
found
robins.
this robin nest,
Uh-huh.
like on a deck. And so
Okay.
we watched the robin eggs,
Oh,
like
cool.
open up into babies. And then the
Aw.
babies, I just sat and watched them all like. While the mom and dad brought them food, and then finally they like fledged out of the nest. We watched them all, like all four of the babies, like one by one. Like jump the nest and fly away, and
Wow. So are they able to fly within a day or two?
no, so it was probably 10, maybe, we don't know exactly when they hatched, but I'm guessing they're gonna be 12 days in.
Okay, okay.
Before they jumped, and then they weren't, I wouldn't say they were flying, they like
They can hop, sort of.
hopped.
Clumsily hop.
It was the second floor deck, so they jumped out of the nest and fell down,
Oh, no.
and then went to the edge of the deck and like looked and like meh, and looked. The parents were down there. So then they kind of glided, not very gracefully down to the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah.
Yeah, but it was so cool.
Wow.
Are you joining us, sir? No. No, okay. Very good. Do we have 1, 2, 3, 4, we have a quorum.
Do you want a Dave maybe run it?
Sure. Dave, can you act as sheriff
Sure.
for the committee?
Yeah. Thank you for that recommendation. Oh, I don't need to do that. Welcome to the Monterey Salinas Transit District Board Administrator Performance Committee meeting. Agenda and notice July 8th, 2024, and it is 9:03. Let's see, can we do roll call to order? We need to do roll call.
Yes. Anna Velasquez, City of Soledad. should be absent. Dave Pacheco, our vice chair.
Here.
City of Greenfield. Joined by Zoom, and Ed Smith, City of Monterey.
Good morning.
Kim Shirley, City of Delray Oaks.
I'm here.
And we have Wendy Root Askew from County Monterey. Yes, here. But we do have a.
Great. Number 2, public comments on matters not on the agenda. Members of the public may address the committee on any matter related to the jurisdiction of MST, but not on the agenda. There is a time limit of not more than 3 minutes for each speaker. The public is encouraged to engage in respectful dialogue that supports freedom of speech and values diversity of opinion. Failure to engage in respectful dialogue will result in speakers being muted or required to leave. The committee will take action on respond immediately to any comments presented, but may choose to follow up at a later time, either individually through staff or on a subsequent agenda. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment on Zoom? I don't see any. I don't see any, right?
So I
Okay,
do not see anything.
okay. So consent agenda, 3-1, approve minutes of the board agenda performance committee on May 13th to 24. So is there interest in improving the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Approve,
Second.
second. Do we have to go out to the public around that?
No.
Nope, okay, so we're all good, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Okay, action items. Review administrative performance, refer Carl Sadecki.
Sadecki, in lieu of Carl Sadecki, Carl Sidoric will provide the update, and really just we continue to have through May, you have our operating result through the end of May, and continue to have extraordinary performance. May was almost 25% higher ridership than the previous May, and that's continued to trend for the entire year. We've been 25 to 30% higher, and the previous year we were 20 to 25% higher year over year. So we are having a robust return of transit ridership. And that has a lot to do with you're hearing in areas specifically in the Bay Area struggles to return transit ridership, but that has to do with the type of workers that we have here that rely on transit. They are not, you can't, as a hospitality worker or an ag worker, you're not able to work from home. And so in the Bay Area, you've seen that shift of working from home, and people, they're not having to take the bus into work, or maybe they're working a few days a week at home. The jobs that we have require you to be here in person, at least for the people who are riding transit. So we've just seen that continue, as well as we've seen continued growth in the use of the contactless payment systems. We're looking to have some meetings later this week. We want to continue to roll those systems out. There's a dream in our industry, and we may be able to achieve it in the next 3 years or so to stop taking cash on board our buses, because it is really expensive for us to collect the cash. The cash collecting machines break down a lot, which cause delays. The issue is, though, how do we get contactless payment into the hands of low-income passengers who may not qualify for a credit card because they don't qualify for a bank account? So we're working with various partners at the state and within the financial markets who are trying to tap into this market. And it's not going to be an overnight project, but I think it's going to be a project that's going to take 2 or 3 years if we're able to do this. But it's a goal that we're seeking. So our trolleys kicked off at the end of May with the City of Monterey's generous support, as well as the aquarium. And by all, we don't have our June stats completed yet, but from what I've seen anecdotally, it looks like tourism is back because those trolleys are packed, and that's always a good. The trolleys are a good indicator of what's going on at the aquarium. The tracks up and down, as well as with our visitors using it, and I just see them out there. I've ridden them myself, and they're packed. So I think it's going to be a good year this year in the hospitality sector after a number of poor years. We have after graduating a class of over 20 new coach operators, we just had another 10 finish up. So we are well positioned with coach operators, and that seems to also be a little rarity in the industry. We've done a number of things. There was no silver bullet on this. Kelly Helkon will be doing a presentation in Northern California to our peers up in the north part of the state, talking about our successes with that. And I can just say, my line is there's no silver bullet. It's more like silver buckshot. We tried a dozen different things, and all of them helped a little bit. And so it's just being flexible enough and creative enough and willing to try new things, I think was our success. So a lot of kudos go out to the whole human resources and training team and the operations team and the maintenance team and just so many people. You know, it was a group effort to get that going, and we're able to sustain it. So this time a year ago, we were over 20 plus coach operators short, and we're not short coach operators now. So that's a great turnaround. That concludes my report. Thanks.
Great. Any questions? Seeing none. Receive state legislative advocacy update, Michelle Overmeyer and her team.
Good morning, committee members. Michelle Overmeyer. I'm the Director of Planning and Innovation. The state legislative report is item 7-3 in your full agenda package, starting on page 101. And we're joined virtually by our advocates in Sacramento, Matt Robinson and Michael Pimentel. They can't share their video, but you should be able to hear them and they can give you an update.
Thank you, Michelle. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. This is Matt Robinson with Shaw, Yoder, Antwi, Schmelzer, and Lang, your advocates in Sacramento. I'm joined by my colleague, Michael Pimentel. Hopefully our headshots will do us justice today, as we're not able to turn on our video, as Michelle mentioned. Wanted to provide you with, what's that? Wanted to provide you with a few updates. One, a point in time on where we're at in the session, an update on a few pieces of legislation that MST has been tracking and taking positions on, an update on where we're at with the state budget, and then finally a brief update on the Taxpayer Protection Act at the end of the report today. And then we'll have some time for questions should folks have them. But let me first begin by announcing one of the sweeter times of year for us advocates in Sacramento, and that is when the summer recess begins. So July 3rd, the day before the 4th, the legislature adjourned for their month-long summer recess, which gives folks like me and others a little bit of breathing room and time to catch up before they come back on August 5th and begin sort of the sprint to the finish, if you will, with the adjournment of session happening on August 31st this year. And that, in case you're keeping score, marks the end of the 2-year session. So when they come back in December, we will have new legislators and we will begin a new 2-year legislative session where a new set of bills will be introduced, and then we'll continue over that 2-year session. July 3rd also marked the last day for policy committees.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
What's that?
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah, sorry, Carl, go ahead.
So I'm not sure what's going on, because this is the first time we've had this, but your audio, your volume is really high.
Okay.
Distortion. So if you could either try talking quieter or adjust your microphone volume, that might help. We've tried to adjust it internally here, and we're being told that it's coming in at too high amount.
Okay, how's that, Carl? Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. How about now?
That's good. Right.
Okay.
There.
Let me stay right there. I just moved away from the mic.
Okay.
As I was saying, the 3rd also marked the deadline for policy committees to meet and move bills either to the floor or to fiscal committees. We've been tracking several bills for MST this year. Actually, 1 or 2 of them extend back to last year. And just to touch on a few of those, SB 960 is a bill that would prioritize transportation projects that are sort of non-traditional, like transit and bike and ped projects within the state highway operations and protection program, as well as in the local streets and roads program. So think about when you're doing, your routine maintenance work, repaving roads, restriping roads, you need to better plan for the incorporation of other facilities, not just putting the roadway back the way it was, but trying to add bike lanes where you can, pedestrian safety improvements, et cetera, and including transit prioritization projects. That bill is still active and heads now to the Appropriations Committee. Another piece of legislation that we've been tracking, this goes back to last year, was AB 817. That's the Brown Act bill that would allow for remote meetings for advisory bodies. to not have to convene in person and establish a quorum that way. Unfortunately, that bill did not pass the policy committee and will have to be introduced again anew in 2025 when the legislature comes back for the next session. We do think there will be some larger conversations around the Brown Act because some of the changes that were made to the Brown Act to accommodate virtual meetings, like Ms. Rubio's AB 2449, Senator Laird's bill that did the same thing for state agencies, those all begin to expire at the end of 25. So there will have to be a larger discussion about what changes to the Brown Act the legislature and the governor want to maintain moving into 2026. So we'll be keeping an eye on that for you all. Another piece of legislation that was really an effort that has spanned multiple years is ACA 1. That's the constitutional amendment that Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguiar Curry has introduced time and time again to try to bring the voter threshold down to 55% for special taxes and property related fees to fund housing and infrastructure. Included in that definition of infrastructure was transportation and transit projects. Unfortunately, after successfully moving that bill out of the legislature last year and placing it on what would be the November 5th ballot of this year, there was some heartburn over some recent polling that had been done around the likely success of that measure on the ballot in November and how it might jeopardize some efforts around housing funding throughout the state. And so another constitutional amendment was ran in the last couple of weeks, ACA 10, that essentially stripped ACA 1 of most of the provisions that we were supportive of, and now will limit that ballot measure to only a lower vote threshold for infrastructure funded with local bonds. So that's some unfortunate news. I think that was an opportunity for a lot of folks that have struggled to pass local sales tax measures for transportation at that higher 2/3 vote to potentially have an easier path forward in that regard. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. The other news that I think we've talked to you all about, probably confused you more than helped you in the last couple of years, was ACA 13. That was the ballot measure that would have taken the vote passage requirements up to whatever level you were trying to change them to, really with the Taxpayer Protection Act, the Business Roundtable Initiative squarely in its sights. As you'll hear in a moment, that TPA initiative isn't moving forward. And so the folks that have worked to place ACA 13 on this ballot have opted to push that out to 2026. I think perhaps thinking something may come back on the taxpayer protection side. Finally, I'll just say we through different hats that we wear are involved in efforts in 25 to work on legislation that will help protect transit employees from what have become more and more instances of violent behavior against our drivers, our riders, et cetera. And that's something that we'll be working on in tandem with the labor representatives of our transit workers. So more to come on that, and we should have an update as we get into the end of this year, if not early in 25 for you on that. But that has been top of mind for a number of transit agencies throughout the state. And I'm sure you all have been seeing some of the headlines that we've been seeing in that regard. So now I'll go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Michael Pimentel, who will touch on the state budget and what it means for MST, and also the sort of the report out on the Taxpayer Protection Act, because I believe you all had asked us to do a special module on that, but it may not be necessary. Anyway, Michael, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Matt, and folks, good to be with you this morning. I want to pick up on two things that have taken place over these past few weeks. The first is the legislature and governor's action on the Budget Act of 2024. On June 29th, the governor did sign a series of budget bills that comprise the Budget Act of 2024. That includes SB 108, which we call the Budget Bill Junior, making some adjustments to a budget bill that was passed earlier in the year to reflect agreement between the three parties, being the governor, the Senate, and the Assembly. Notable in that bill is the preservation of money that the California transit industry, led primarily by the California Transit Association, but with strong support and partnership from MST, was able to secure last year, that affords $5.1 billion for transit agencies statewide to maintain or scale up service, but also to build out major capital projects. Now, that money has been, unfortunately, I should say the first tranche of that money has been under a temporary spending freeze by the state of California. We understand in the short term there should be an update from the state that speaks to how and when that money will begin to flow to regions. But this is good news in terms of ensuring that agencies like MST do have the resources they need to continue to deliver on services and to continue to build major capital projects. I also want to reflect on, as part of that budget agreement, there was the enactment of a transportation trailer bill. And last year, we had a transportation trailer bill that did quite a lot to establish a new accountability and reporting framework around the access and use of the $5.1 billion that I just referred to. This year, the transportation trailer bill makes some minor adjustments to that trailer bill from last year to create some additional years of reporting requirement to reflect or to be cognizant to the fact that the $5.1 billion that was preserved this year will be moving out on a slightly longer appropriation timeline. And so, of course, as we go through today's discussion, happy to take any questions from you all, but did just want to highlight in particular the maintenance of that money. Now, Matt did reference the California Business Roundtable Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. We were asked by MST staff on behalf of the chair to bring this item for discussion because it was an initiative that had the potential to significantly alter the ability to generate revenues here at the state, both at the state level and at the local level. Now, fortunately, in the time that has transpired between that request to present and our presentation today, we saw some intervention by the California Supreme Court to take that measure off of the November 2024 ballot. And so to recall exactly what this measure would have done, but again, will not do because it's been removed from the ballot, the bill would have eliminated, or rather the measure would have eliminated the legislature and the governor's ability to raise taxes and fees themselves. Under the California Constitution, a tax can be levied by the legislature by 2/3 vote and signature by the governor. This measure would have required not only those actions, but also the need to put out that tax for a majority vote by the California electorate. And so that did, again, remove the ability for the legislature and the administration to increase taxes themselves. It would have also reclassified a number of fees and various charges that local governments and state government apply to a variety of activities and reclassified them as taxes, which would also then apply to them the requirement for a 2/3 vote and then the majority vote by the electorate. Would have limited the ability, again, for the state and local governments to generate revenue. And then it would have closed what is often referred to as the upland loophole. There was a court case several years ago that determined that for purposes of local measures, if you have a citizen-run initiative, that initiative can pass by a vote of your electorate of 50% plus one. This would have required that, much like all other taxes, those local measures that are citizen-run initiatives pass by 2/3 vote. Now, there were some significant concerns from local government sectors across the state, raising concerns about what this would do to local revenue generation. And the reason that the California Supreme Court took this measure off of the ballot was that they viewed the measure as being one that would significantly revise the California Constitution, not simply amend it. And their main point of contention was the revisions to the legislature and the governor's ability to raise taxes. And so what that means is that for this year, while this measure is not moving forward, there is some indication from the sponsors of the measure, again, the California Business Roundtable, that they may try their hand again in a future year, likely eyeing 2026, where they would scale back the measure and perhaps focus on only the local portion, the portion on which the California Supreme Court did not opine and where they did not raise constitutional limitations. And so I'll stop my report there. Again, we're happy to take any questions or comments from those in the room. And so, Carl, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael or Matt? I'm returning it back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your reports. We appreciate it. And I think we should go on to 4-3, receive federal legislative update. Carl?
Do we have Don Gilchrist on the line? Okay. I'm not sure what happened with Don, but it is 150 degrees in Washington, D.C. right now, so maybe he melted. I will just say from a federal standpoint, we do have 2 earmark requests community project funding. We don't call them earmarks anymore. We were able to get support from both Senators Padilla and Butler for a project that would extend our hydrogen fueling and microgrid process that we're currently undergoing at our Monterey facility to our King City facility. We also should find out this week what our funding levels will, if we receive anything in the low and no emission bus grant projects. This time around, we've been unsuccessful in every round of this funding over the past several years, as has a number of smaller transit operators around the Central Coast region. So this year we took a creative approach and we submitted a grant as a region with transit operators from Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara counties, from San Luis Obispo County, Santa Cruz County, and Monterey County, applying as a large group. Hopefully we can get some gravitas, some weight to our project, because it seems this funding goes mostly to the large urban areas. And should find out later this week whether that approach was successful or not, because none of us have been very successful on our own. So we're going to attempt to do it. We call ourselves the Central Coast Super Region. Was well received, at least in concept. We'll see whether it brings us anything. From the politics going on, I think we've shared with you our concern about the SURF project. We are attempting to get all of our third-party agreements in place we were originally given a June 30th deadline for the SURF getting all the third-party agreements for the SURF project in place by June 30th per the Federal Transit Administration's request, because they need time to put together a contract to secure the funds that we have that are included in the Biden's fiscal year budget. And if we don't secure this money by the end of the calendar year, it's really then becomes up in the air as far as what happens with the administration and what happens with the Senate. And could that money be clawed back? A zero emission electric bus project in California might not be seen as being as supported in a different administration as in the current administration. So we are I have negotiated with the Federal Transit Administration, and they've given us to September 15th to get the last of our third-party agreements, which would be the Coastal Commission update in by that point, and they've agreed that they could provide us that. Yes. Oh, Don is on the line. Great. Save me, Don. My tap shoes have worn out.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
I apologize for the lateness. I had some issues here that delayed me a little bit. I'm sorry about that. Can you let me know what the question was?
Oh, I was just providing an update on what I thought was going on in Washington and was talking about the SURF project and our attempting to get all our third-party agreements in. I talked a
Yep.
little bit about our community project requests with Senator Padilla and Butler.
Okay.
And I talked about the pending announcement on the Lono grants, should be coming out sometime later this week.
Thank you.
And that's all I was able to cover.
I would just say that in addition to that, the thing to keep in mind is that now that we're in July, Congress is coming back from their break, and it's just the big push to try to get some stuff done before they take their August break. In recent years, they have delayed or affected their August break, but I don't see that happening this year. I think they will be gone pretty much the entire month of August. So we want to see them make a lot of progress on appropriations issues during this month. And I think there will be some movement, but essentially what we're seeing is the two sides are solidifying in their overall budget standoff. And this is going to play out late into the year, and we won't see the funding bills resolved until late in the calendar year. And we're kind of used to that. October 1 is the start of the fiscal year. They typically miss that deadline. They're already planning on coming back after the November elections to do a lame duck session. And it will be still a big challenge to try to finish things up before the December holidays and New Year's. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't play over into next year. The wild card, of course, is what happens with the elections, and then people will and leadership will take a look and see what's in their best interest. Cut a deal now or come back later. Now, you recall last year, eventually Speaker Johnson did cut a deal and kept the government open, forestalled some of the deeper cuts that were envisioned, but he paid a huge political price for that with his more conservative members in the House. I think it's going to be very difficult for him to do that again. If he were to cut that deal again this year, I think he'd be on politically very thin ice. So it's going to be difficult. I think the November elections will have a huge impact on how they finally play out. And now, of course, with the programs that are of most interest to MST are your transit formula programs, which include the bus and bus facility money. And those are intact. They are not being affected by this overall appropriations battle because you have a 5-year surface transportation program authorization in place. And there's also some advanced appropriations for these programs that were enacted in the bipartisan infrastructure law in 2021. For the most part, 90 to 95% of that is not being impacted by this so far. And so what we're looking at is will they add money for transportation grant programs such as RAISE? Those are the multimodal grants. Will they fund the capital investment grants program at the level that it needs to be funded at and it's traditionally funded at? And will they add additional money from the general fund to supplement the bus and bus facilities programs? So there are definitely things that are worth fighting for you, but essentially we want to see the overall budget situation get resolved so that you can have your legislation, which is the transportation bill, get enacted into law, and then FTA can start cutting the checks. So in a way, you can sort of see you're being indirectly impacted by the overall budget fight rather than directly impacted. So that's this lay of the land. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks here as Congress starts to slog through the details of the appropriations bills, and we're hoping to see some better signs by the time they leave for the August break. So I'll pause there and see if that provoked any questions or comments.
Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, I'd like to thank you for your time. We appreciate you being here, and
Yeah.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 5, closed session. Should I read this commentary here or just assume that there is no?
There is no closed session, so
Okay.
while you can read it, we don't need you.
I'm not gonna read it.
We'd rather you not read it.
Well, then let me read it then. Can adjourn the meeting at 9:35.
Okay, let's hope that